We have a very special guest with us today. Actor, retired professional wrestler, author, political commentator for RT, former governor, former mayor. He's also a naval veteran and former mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Please welcome to the show, Jesse Ventura's here. Hey, Jesse, how are you?
Good, Jimmy. How are you? Yeah, the resume gets pretty long. What it tells you is this: I can only hold a job for about 4 years.
Fantastic. I don't know if I would ever be able to hold a job, an actual job, but it's great to
well,
have
that's
you.
how come politics worked out so well. You usually get a 4-year term, and that's just about. I was 4 years as mayor, and then I moved on, and then I was one term, 4 years as governor, and I moved on. And I like to refer to myself as a statesman rather than a politician, in the fact that I didn't make it a career. I get elected, and then when I'm done, I go back to the private sector again. And in fact, between being mayor and governor was almost 7 or 8 years between the two.
And do you feel like the same conditions that led you to run third party and beat the Democrats and Republicans before? Do you think that is that stirring inside of you again? You think the conditions are ripe?
Oh, the conditions are right. Just the problem is there's no way to do it because, it's, I don't know, maybe I can tie it into the Black Lives movement for a moment and make the stretch to that. You want to see prejudice and you want to see unfairness. Take a look at how third parties are treated in our country in comparison to the two major parties, because the two major parties get to make all the rules and all the decisions. And so those decisions are always made to benefit them and to always suppress any type of third-party movement without a doubt. I thought about running this year, and I inquired in. I thought my best way in was the Green Party, but unfortunately they couldn't give me a clear path to the nomination, even though I don't know if you heard, there was a poll done by one of the major poll companies, and it was played on Fox News, listing Biden, Trump, and me, and without even being a candidate, I polled 18%.
Yeah, people are ready for someone like you. People are, we're being offered Trump light and Trump. That's what's happening. Again, it's plain to see. It's laid bare the one party rule. In fact, how they handled this COVID is also, the stimulus bills, the CARES Act was just it completely reveals that it's one party rule. As Nancy Pelosi is ripping up Donald Trump's State of the Union speech, she's passing his entire legislative agenda, including money for his border wall and an extra $131 billion to go bomb people. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And, it was unfortunate, my situation, because, I had people were questioning whether I belonged with the Green Party. And, that's what went on underneath the thing. And I thought, what do you mean belong? I said, I'm anti-war, and I'm for the environment and everything that'll save it. Isn't that good enough?
Mm-hmm. Now,
those two major issues, and all the rest of them in my book are fairly irrelevant, because to me those are the two major issues. And that was one of the reasons I shied away from the libertarians, because they don't believe in climate change. And I think that's how can you not believe in it? It's happening right before your very eyes.
Right. I mean, yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing stories that you were told bad information about your path to the nomination inside the Green Party. And when the party was contacted by individuals interested, this is from an email I was sent by someone interested in helping Jesse explore the nomination process, party insiders conspired to stack the PCSC and other committees against any nominee but their chosen one. Jesse pointed out on Galloway's show that the Greens he was working with couldn't give him a pathway to the nomination, but we have reason to believe, because of the above, that the governor has been misled. So do you have anything to say in response to that?
Well, if it's indeed there is a clear path, I'll take it a step further. Right now, I'm in the midst of a medical in my family, and if I would have announced my candidacy, Jimmy, I would have immediately lost my job, and I would have immediately lost my health care. And I think that, in today's day and age, if I would have did that, many people would have questioned my sanity, including myself.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
In today's day and age, you're going to give up your job and give up your health care when, a quarter or a third of our country has neither a job or health care. And I thought, that's crazy. And so I do have this that we're going through right now, and this in and of itself could take me out of it if it comes out negative. If it comes out positive, I told them that in the end of June, if in July they want to call me and say, we will give you our nomination, well, that slight door could still be open then, I guess, if they felt the desire to do that. But what I've heard is that Howie Hawkins, their major candidate, he has the major. I would have been required to go to the convention. Let me explain this. Go to the convention and wait until, if no one made 51%, then it would free up the delegates and I'd win on the second round. Well, that all seems nice, but I'm old enough. I was in the Reform Party when, after Perot ran in 92, we were going to show the world we were still growing, that we were not just Ross Perot, that we were a legitimate third-party movement. We got three-time Governor Dick Lamb of Colorado to be our candidate in 96. In the 11th hour, the Perot people came in, cut his legs out from underneath him, and Perot ran again. So I know, and everybody I talked to that I trust in the political arena told me the only red flag they had was the Green Party's nominating convention.
Okay, so, well, I just think don't close the door. I'm hearing opposite information from people inside the Green Party saying that you weren't given the straight.
Well, and then that brings up another thing, Jimmy. Why is the Green Party fractured?
Right.
I don't have time to bring a party together. I know what it's like to take on the Dems and Repubs, and you sure as hell can't do it with a fractured party, and then I'm required to mend the party first and then take on the Dems and Repubs.
Right. I hear you.
I mean, when I was in the Mongols, my name was Superman, but I don't know if I qualify anymore.
Okay. Well. Anyway, it's the people are so desperate for a genuine article, Jesse. You can understand that, right?
Oh, totally. If here's the other deal that people need to know, Jimmy. We got to elect a third-party president, and here's why. If Trump or Biden, either one gets elected, the polarization continues.
Yes.
Worse than ever. I've got Minnesota. I can tell you exactly what will happen. If you elect a third-party president, it'll work out like it did in Minnesota. If the two houses are split, like I had a Republican House and a Democratic Senate, whoever I sided with generally prevailed until the third into the fourth year. That's when they jump in bed together and they turn against you. And it's the Dems and the Repubs, in my case, against the common sense middle governor. And so what happened in Minnesota, I put forward the budget, which is my job, fiscally responsible. They rejected it. They came back with their own budget. It was fiscally irresponsible. I vetoed it. They overrode my veto and sent it again. I vetoed it. The only thing I could do a second time, they overrode me again. So they took ownership. Well, they did it to get me. And I fooled them. I didn't run, and they were left with their own budget. A year later, they're $5 billion in deficit because of this fiscally irresponsible budget that they were willing to gamble the people of Minnesota in which to get me.
So
that's how it works. People need to know that's the way it works between these two parties and a third party. They always make their decision to strengthen here's the list. It's party first, Then it's big-time money donors second. It's your own personal feelings third, and we, the people, might be fourth, but there could be something that would even make us fifth.
And so do you feel that I've come to the realization that Bernie Sanders was in fact there to make sure that didn't happen, that a third party didn't rise up. And that's why he, was put in a leadership position in the Democratic Party and is still maintaining his position on the ballots as we go forward, again, to try to squelch any kind of a third party. What do you say to that?
Oh, I would tend to agree with you on that, because I'll tell you my personal thing that happened with Bernie back in 2016. 2016, before it ended up Trump and Hillary, Bernie came to Minneapolis, and I actually went down there with the intention that I would break from my norm and endorse him. And they treated me completely coldly. They didn't want nothing to do with me when I went down there as former Minnesota governor independent.
That's his campaign.
Then when I did get to meet with Bernie in a hallway.
That's who they are.
For about a minute and a half. But I learned what I needed to learn, Jimmy. I asked him, I said, Senator, if you lose the nomination to Secretary Clinton, will you make a third-party run, or will you support a third-party candidate in any way? He looked right at me and said, absolutely not. I will support Secretary Clinton. I looked at him and said, thank you, and I turned around and walked away. And I knew right there, Bernie Sanders is not a real independent. Bernie Sanders is merely a front person who calls himself an independent, but is truly part of the Democratic Party and system, because, and whatever they do with him, I'm not privy to, but I fully believe that all the way, because after he met with me, and, I'm independent all the way. And, he just turned, he wouldn't give me the time of day, certainly didn't want an endorsement in any way, shape, or form from me.
I know, Jesse. There's one story after another just like that. It's just amazing. They have the Bernie Sanders and his campaign and the people around him have the amazing ability to turn ardent supporters into enemies. It's unbelievable that the talent that they have, for the penchant that they have to be able to do that. It doesn't stop. It keeps going. He's getting most of his own delegates right now are turning against him. His own delegates.
Yeah. So, well, the slang term for them are called burners.
Right.
And I was told burners would have jumped with me in a second because they said they wanted a candidate with a spine.
Right. That's exactly true. That's exactly true.
I do put it this way, and you can tell them I do have the spine, but I just can't make the commitment at this time until this health thing is settled in my family. And, because I don't care when, I did 14 years of public service, but I'm going to tell people honestly, my family comes first. I'm not going to jeopardize them in any way, shape, or form just to hold public office.
I hear you. So let's move on to the current, what's happening right now, the protests in the street, starting in Minneapolis. You were the governor, you were the mayor. So tell me, what's your take on all this?
Jimmy, it's worse than that. It's my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up there, right where it all happened. That's the border between South High School and Roosevelt High School. Back in the days before they had open enrollment, when where you lived, you went to school. Lake Street would be considered 30th Street. I lived on 32nd Street. If you lived south of 32nd Street, you went to Roosevelt. If you lived north of it, you went to South.
Okay.
So that's my neighborhood. My mom used to do the shopping right there in the High Lake Shopping Center, which is burned to the ground now. So that's how close it is to me. Now, having said that, it's a tragic situation we're in, but it's the truth. And we're finally being made, hopefully, to look at the truth. Now, I'm going to take a little different run at this because I'm going to bring in my own pet peeve here. And I can't believe that nobody's raising it. Okay, let's move on to last week, if we may, when the National Football League and Roger Goodell made their apology.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. That was all wonderful and fine, but in my opinion, there should have been a direct apology to Colin Kaepernick in that.
Correct, I agree.
And having missed on that already, I can understand why. And here's the problem I have. 70% of the National Football League are African Americans. And yet, they're protesting about racism, and they have the name of a team in Washington. I've been protesting against that name for decades now. I march with the Native Americans in Minnesota whenever that team comes to town. You know the team I'm talking about. The Washington, and I don't like saying the name because to me it's as bad as the N-word.
Okay.
And yet, you hear not a peep about getting that name changed. And my counter is, don't Red Lives Matter too? Because that nickname is not only racist, it honors genocide. When I was marching with the Native Americans a few years ago, because I've done it multiple times, young kid come up to me and showed me the Winona, Minnesota newspaper from 1860-something. And you know what the headline was? Governor Ramsey raises the bounty on Redskins.
Wow.
In other words, the government paid you. And you
them.
could go out and hunt innocent people down, kill them, bring back their, quote, red skins, and you got paid. He raised it to $200 a skin, which would translate today to be between $4,000 and $5,000 bucks.
Wow.
To go out and hunt people and shoot them and kill them like they were varmints or rats. And that's what that term comes from. And we have now the African American players, they've all said, Adrian Peterson, we're probably all going to take a knee next fall. Great. I support that 100%. I was never against it. And I'm a veteran. But the point is, how can you take a knee when you're wearing the helmet of that team from Washington? And if Goodell and these people want to make an impact immediately, suspend that name right now and get a new one. I've got a good one for them. How about the Washington Crooks? They can name it. They can name it after all our elected officials out there.
So Jesse, did you, when you were, did you have any issues with you? Did you try to tackle any criminal justice reform when you were in power?
Well, the criminal justice reform I did personally, I gave me, the Secretary of State, and the Chief Justices of the Minnesota Supreme Court were the pardoning force. Any kid that came up to me with a marijuana conviction got taken out of their record. That's another thing. End the war on drugs, and that will help tremendously to ending this police problem. The war on drugs is one of the creations of the police problem you have today.
No doubt.
And it's time to end that. Didn't we learn from the prohibition of alcohol when they were bashing in doors, machine gunning people on the street back when my mom and dad were alive? And we didn't learn from that prohibition? And why is it the government's business to tell you what you can or cannot put in your body?
Yeah, I'm with you. There's no doubt about it, right? So they passed civil rights legislation, and then they immediately started imprisoning people over a drug war, which was, there's evidence that it was fueled by our own CIA.
It could be. Yeah. All of that. It's fueled by money, and money buys anything, And we have an entire system created by the Democrats and Republicans, a system based upon bribery. You bribe the politicians with campaign donations.
That's right.
You do that in the private sector, you go to jail. It's called bribery. But in the public sector, it's alive and well. How do you think you get in the door to be heard? You want to hear something, Jimmy?
Yeah.
You know when I ran for governor of Minnesota, do you know how much money I raised?
No.
$300,000.
That's nothing. How did you win?
I won on ideas, and I won because they let me in the debates, and I won because Minnesotans are pretty smart people generally. And, they decided that, it was time. I was real. I was in a debate with the big candidates, Humphrey's son and Mayor Coleman, Senator Coleman, and they asked a question, and it got to me, and I looked at the crowd and said I didn't know. There was like a 30-second pause, and they erupted in cheering because they finally heard someone say he didn't know everything. Then I answered a question where big long question, and it required only a yes or no. I leaned in and said yes. Again, a huge laughter and applause. And I turned to the commentator or whatever, and I said, "Well, I answered the question, didn't I?" He had a good sense of humor. He leaned in and simply said, "Yes." No, and they also told me when I ran, "Oh, don't go to college campuses. They don't vote." I turned to my people. I says, "Book me in every college campus in Minnesota." I said, "You're telling me, Jesse, that Bobby Ventura's going to show up? They ain't going to show up to hear me." Every college campus, they were hanging from the rafters. And later on, after I won, headlines in the Minneapolis paper, "Ventura wins." Subheadline, "Throngs of young voters turn out."
So yeah, so you can understand that why people still want you to run.
Well, like I said, if they can, and this would be perfect time. Jimmy, think of this. They're going to have, and here's another thing let's clear up about mail-in voting. How dare them say it's fraudulent? That's like telling every veteran in America when he's deployed overseas he's committing a fraudulent vote, because how do you think veterans have to vote? By mail. It's called an absentee ballot. We've been doing it for hundreds of years.
I'm with you on that. So how do you, so there's a push right now for a third party, a Nick Brana, and it's called Movement for a People's Party. And his idea is not to be left, right, or libertarian, but to try to join people from the left and the right, because it's not left-right issues anymore. It's them against us, right? It's like you see the looting of the Treasury with the CARES Act, the fact that they won't give people health care, even in the middle of a pandemic, they won't give people health care. That's not, or a UBI. And they won't, and the way they're handling this is almost punitive to the workers, right? The way, right now we have 25% unemployment. There's 40 million people unemployed. That's as big as the Great Depression. In the way Germany's handling it, they have 6% unemployment. So we could be handling it better. It's not a secret how to handle this. They just chose to do it in the most rapacious way possible with the most injury to the working class. And and then of course it hurts the minority communities and the black communities even more. So they become the flashpoint for this kind of crisis. And so do you I really don't have much hope, really, honestly, especially for electoral politics or for our government to ever come around, because it's laid bare that when we had a crisis, instead of our government coming to our aid and trying to fix it, our government took advantage of it to screw us and take wealth and transfer it upward. So in the analogy Dylan Radigan made on this show, it's as if the United States is a car and it ran out of gas. And it's not left or right to show up and put gas in the car. But what they did was they showed up, took all the wheels off, and then ripped the radio out of the car and left it there without gas. So we're living with a government that's actually an enemy to us. So what do we do?
Well, here's what you do. You quit voting for Democrats and Republicans. I've been harping on that for 20 years. Second of all, if the car's that bad and it's run out of fuel, then it's time to switch to a Tesla. And that means change the damn government. Yeah. Just like we need to change how we drive around and go electric. Okay, having said that, you do that by doing it at the local level first. Do you want to know something major, Jimmy, that could be done? I don't think they have the power to stop it at the local level. Why is it that they put the party's name on the ballot? Right, I agree with you. Why don't they just put the candidate's name, and that forces the public to educate themselves to where they have to go beyond looking if they're conservative or liberal, then all they got to do is look for Democrat or Republican. Well, if you just put the candidate's name on the ballot, then it's up to the voter to go, oh, what does John Smith stand for?
Right, right.
And besides, the way it is now, I'd rather have a voter in there go in there and do eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Well, ranked choice,
Than what you got right now.
Ranked choice voting is also a lot of people point to as one of the solutions to what's happening, and the fact that
that'll help a third party though. So that's got to, they're going to try to keep that out of the way too, because that is something that can generate a third party. If you don't like the other party, you could vote for the third party rather than say the Democrat or the Republican. So they'll be very reluctant to allow that to happen too. Any roadblock they can put up to stop a third party, they will do it.
Yeah, we saw it pass in Maine on a referendum, and the legislator, both parties took them to court and went all the way, I think, to the Supreme Court. But they finally sided with the people, and so they do have the ranked choice voting. And they're afraid of that. So anything that
very much so, very much so. So that's what you're facing. But I'll tell you, to be honest, though, these two candidates to me, are the most beatable ones I've seen in a long time, to where if you had a powerful third-party candidate with name recognition, who had a track record, could come out of the woodwork and, I think, beat both of these candidates, because they got the highest negatives in history of two candidates.
Yes.
And a third party, if you bring the right message, and to me, here's the other thing I'd do, Jimmy, and I know we got to move on here, but here's the other thing I'd do. That big, huge defense bill both parties okayed?
Yes.
Well, if I got in, I'd accept that completely, that whole big defense bill. Mm-hmm. But you know what I'd do with it?
What?
I'd take about, $200 billion of it, or whatever I could get out of it, squeeze out of it, and I would use it rather than buying aircraft carriers and rockets and all that other paraphernalia. Have you seen those machines that clean up the ocean?
Oh, yes, I have. Yes. Get the
I'd spend $200 billion buying those machines, which then would create jobs because they'd have to produce them like heck. Instead of building tanks, they'd have to produce them.
Right.
And then I would take enough money to train the United States Navy in operating them, and we would then start a new war. It would be a war to clean the pollution out of our ocean next to our country.
That would be fine. I think you'd find a lot of support for stuff like that, for sure.
Well, that's what I'd do with that defense bill. I'd get the Navy working on fighting that war instead of riding aircraft carriers halfway around the world supporting crap in the Middle East.
So, Jesse, what do you think? It's a very what you're talking about sounds like what people are talking about the police departments when they say defund the police. They mean take all the extra money we've been spending or overspending on the police and spend it in our communities. And what you're saying, instead of spending it on bombing other countries, let's spend it on fixing up the ocean around our country. It's kind of like a defund policy, right?
And no, it's not defunding anything. It's just changing the direction of your military. The military will do what you want them to do or what they're ordered to do.
Right. Right.
And they follow orders. I always laugh because everyone in America is so frightened of socialism. You just mention the word and people panic. And I always look at them and go, don't you realize that we spend the majority of our tax dollars on a total major socialist program?
Yep.
And they always go, what? What do you mean, Social Security? I go, no, the United States military. That's socialism at its best. And they get unlimited of our money for their socialism. And think of this, it's socialism that's actually now being used to protect your very capitalism.
So they always say, Jesse, and I know you have to go, and I appreciate your time, really do. They tell us that soldiers are fighting overseas to protect our freedoms. And then Trump has the soldiers go out and squelch people exercising their First Amendment rights. So what are those soldiers actually doing?
Well, first of all, they're not fighting for our freedom. That was the George Bush myth. where he said that big thing on the build-up to the Iraq War and that lie. Remember when he said, if we don't fight them there, we're going to fight them here.
Right.
So he got the whole country all fearful. Here's the bigger picture, Jimmy. I want to know who they are. They have us so afraid that someone wants to take over the United States. Name that someone. Who is it? Is it the Russians? No. The Russians got their own problems. They're not worried about taking us over. Who would be? China going to take us over? Well, maybe they're going to economically wage war on us and beat us that way, maybe. But are they going to come in and physically occupy America and invade us? No. So we have this buildup of military to defend ourselves against this alleged invasion from who? ISIS? Are they going to come across the Atlantic and invade in Virginia and we'll have to repel them like Normandy? I would like to be told who this entity is that the U.S. has to fear, considering the fact of this. We have enough firepower to blow up the world probably 100 times over if we want to. If we take a suicidal route, we can destroy the entire planet. Who would dare push us to that brink? No one. So what is the point of these weapons of war to be fought and be told that, oh, we got to stop them there or they're going to get us here? Who? Who is that? The greatest thing people can read is Major General Smedley Butler, United States Marine Corps, wrote a phenomenal book called War is a Racket. I urge people, get that book and read it. Smedley was a 2-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, and he'll explain in Marine Corps simplicity. That means the book's also thin. Marines get to the point. He'll explain it, that war is indeed nothing but a racket. It's a money-making racket for people like Dick Cheney and Halliburton and people like that to enjoy success and get wealthy and rich over blood.
And people are so tired of wars. They thought Barack Obama was going to end them. He took us from 2 wars to 7, and Trump ran on a non-interventionist policy. And again, we're still in Afghanistan. We're still in Iraq. And he bombed Syria.
We're in 9 or 10 of them now. We're in Somalia now.
Right.
They're not telling anybody about that. We got active combat going on in Somalia.
Right. And so what? How did this is this just going to be the end of our empire, Jesse? Do you think?
Well, it could be. We followed Rome to a T, and so the ultimate result of what happened to Rome.
Right.
They went out and got involved in a bunch of wars throughout the world with their colonialism crap, and it ended up destroying their infrastructure internally from within, which is exactly what we're doing right now. We've got nothing but the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and the gap is getting larger between that. Trump crows about his great economy, but a child born today, I don't know what the number would be now, starts his life off at about $70,000 in debt. Just when a child takes their first breath of air. And so there's nothing to crow about our economy on. All they do is borrow, and my mother and dad trained me never to have debt. That's why this whole pandemic isn't hitting me that hard, because my mother would buy a new car every 4 years. She'd trade in the old one and pay cash for the new one. We never had a car payment in my house growing up back in the 50s and 60s, and that's the way she trained me. They told me, if you have debt, then you are never free. And so I've tried to live my debt, and the first thing I do is destroy all my debt. And when you're in the position people are in today, not having debt is phenomenal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So do you have any prescription to heal the country at this moment?
Wow. Well, I think, I think it's a thing of socialism a bit, but first we got to get rid of this pandemic. First and foremost. It's got to go and do whatever it takes to make that happen. Second of all, we need we can tie in the economic gain and the direction to our country to the Black Lives Matter movement, because When everybody does better, the world's a better place. That's already been proven. When the population gets lifted up, everyone gets lifted up. So economically, we need to address that tremendously, and part of that is this debt and the way our government operates. It's absurd that, they just print money, they go to war. I mean, George Bush goes to war and cuts taxes.
I know.
How do you do that? And so we need legislation like this. How about a war tax? The minute they decide to take an armed whatever the word is, I'm tongue-tied here, when they go out in conflict outside of our country, there should be a tax that kicks in immediately to pay for that war. Because if you hit people in their pocketbook, they won't be so quick to go to war then if they realize they actually have to pay for it.
Yeah, you're right. Right now there's no draft and there's no tax for the war. And so they
just put it on the credit card. That's all George Bush and Dick Cheney did.
Right.
Stuck it on the old credit card, the debt.
And
how do you start a war and then cut taxes?
And let me just give you my final question.
Sure.
I try to, I don't judge people for the way they vote. I didn't try to judge Trump voters. I try to understand them because some of them are in my own family. And, we're all given horrible choices, and I bet we all wish we had better ones. And so right now it seems like the left and the right is, the left or the Democrats and the media did this ridiculous Russiagate thing for 3 years, which was a complete evidence-free conspiracy theory that red baited the president and anybody who was their enemies of the Democratic Party.
Sure.
And so it was just disgusting and despicable, right? And we were one of the shows that called that out.
Yep.
And so now with what's happening in the streets, and Trump is trying to make this all about Antifa and George Soros, and now the 75-year-old guy in Buffalo who got knocked down, he was somehow instigating that himself. And it's crazy, right? And so how do we get...
Yep.
And the president himself tweeted that out, and that's where they're getting it from. And it's like, so how do you... How do we get people to they're in their own psychotic bubbles? One people saying Russiagate, the other people saying Antifa, and somehow the cops are right, and it's just how do we what can we do? I think we need a charismatic leader like you.
I only have one answer for you, and it's next to impossible, but it's the only way out that I know of. Are you ready, Jimmy?
Yes.
If we all got mail-in ballots, that means it's easy to write a name in.
Mm-hmm.
If enough people write my name in, then I got to do the job, don't I?
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Jerry, now in all seriousness, I don't know what to do other than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so hard. I can't get on the third-party ballot because of all the stuff we talked about earlier and all that. And, but you can still write in, and if it ends up the majority, because I still believe that because of the coronavirus, we're going to see a rebound. And here's what I fear, that it'll be so drastic and all that, Trump's going to declare martial law, and there's not going to be an election.
Yeah, anything can happen. Right now, the craziest things have already happened. So,
or he's going to get us into a war, or he's going to or the rioting in the streets is going to flare up so much that he has to declare martial law. They're preparing for it, and he's got bars ready and waiting to go.
Yeah.
He can't wait for that to get the call on that. And I put nothing past these desperate men. People need to remember something. There was another guy in history who ran on law and order.
Nixon.
That was the basis of his whole campaign. And he ran for office in 1930s Germany.
Oh.
And his first name was Adolf. So people ought to try to remember. Adolf was a law and order candidate, but in some ways he was better than our law and order candidate. You know why?
Why?
He actually served in the army.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I see. The second guy, the one I was thinking of was Nixon. He ran on Law and Order.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, but take it back farther. Let's
Right.
take it to Germany, 1930s.
Yeah.
Hitler's campaign was on law and order for Germany,
It's
to restore law and order.
and it's scary to see how many people will just not believe their own eyes and ears and believe what their leader says, like Donald Trump saying that.
Well, and then they scapegoat certain people. Look at what Trump he did his first 4 years. He scapegoated the Latinos.
Right.
He ran on scapegoating them in 2016. Build the wall, all of that stuff.
Right. Yep, I know.
You know. So anyway, Jimmy, I got to run.
Jesse, it's a
You
pleasure.
take care and keep up the good work. And you know, on your end, I don't know what to tell you on that whole green thing, but whatever.
Okay, everybody, check out Jesse's show, World According to Jesse, on RT with Brigida Santos, and it's always-
And let me add, get on the bandwagon to change that Washington football name. It can be done right now. Red Lives Matter too.
Okay. Jesse Ventura, thank you very much, pal. I appreciate your time. Everybody's a big fan.
You're welcome, Jimmy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?